You're listening to Kerry Lutz's Financial Survival Network, where you get valuable information you just can't find anywhere else. To thrive in today's trying times, you need the Financial Survival Network, now more than ever. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and get your free newsletter and gift. Financial Survival Network, now more than ever.
And welcome. You are listening to watching the Financial Survival Network. I'm Kerry Lutz. If you're in business, you know it's all about cash flow. And sometimes you need to borrow money. You need to arrange financing, even equity, other ways. There's a whole world out there now. There's a world of alternative financial sources, and you just have to master it. And person you're about to hear from, Stephen Sachs. Stephen, you have a platform called fundingnav.com. It's primarily UK based, but I think it's the wave of the future. As banks have basically cut off small business financing around the globe, you need to find other alternatives. Stephen, you've got an interesting background here. Author, Reboot Your Business, The Intelligent Investor's Handbook, and you tell your story of you had a brand doing over $30 million a year in revenue in 30 different countries before it was acquired. You talk about you had a furniture business, racked up millions of pounds in debt with no way to get out, and basically, if I understand it right, you have broken the code and figured out how to get out of these messes that are hopefully temporary. What is the key? I mean, I know the old saying, when you're digging a hole, stop digging it deeper, right? But so you have to do a turnaround. You've got to figure out how to conserve your cash, how to get more, and how to get yourself out of this mess that generally it's one you've created. But what is the key to doing that?
I think the key is to surround yourself with people that tell you the way it is. I think that's the first thing. I think that too many business leaders have poor advice. In fact, I was speaking to somebody earlier today who got himself into a lot of trouble at one time, and he blamed that for being the biggest factor. So yeah, if you've got people that are going to say to you, hang on a minute, maybe we need to do this a different way or not do it at all, then that's generally sage advice that you should listen to.
Yeah, well, Socrates said, I'm the wisest man in Athens because I know that I don't know. And a lot of what I learned about business was from my father, who second, third generation entrepreneur. I'm fourth generation entrepreneur. That would make him third generation. And one of the things is if you figured out that you don't know something, you either have to go and learn it if that is doable, or you need to find an expert. And presumably you're going to be paying this expert. So it's kind of incumbent upon you to actually do what the expert says, unless it's something so far off the wall that you can't do it. So knowing that you don't know, really crucial, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they say, don't they, that if you want to become, in order to master something, initially you're unconsciously incompetent. So
Yes.
you can't do it and you don't know you can't do it. And then you work through sort of gradual process of being consciously incompetent, and ultimately, of course, like we experience with driving, where we kind of drive a car and we don't even think about it. We can drive a car and we don't, it takes no mental work from us to do it. So yeah, and I think there's so many things are like that. And yeah, the first thing is you've got to know that you can't do this, and if you can't do it, as you say, either you find somebody that can do it better than you. It's always good advice, or take the time and invest the resource and learn it.
Yeah, for sure. And the unconscious competence, even more so with the advent of the Tesla, and self-driving and autopilot and all that. But, you can't be on autopilot with your business. You've got to have unconscious competence, and you need conscious competence, right?
I tell you what, I think that it's an interesting point that you make there, because I personally have a big issue with the level of data that a Tesla would be able to glean from what it sees. So, I mean, I can tell you what, I'm a really keen cyclist. And as a cyclist, I'm very vulnerable on the roads, and therefore I'm looking at all of the clues all of the time. So, for example, if I see a car about to pull out from a side road onto the road which I'm cycling, then I'm not just looking at the car, I'm looking at so much more than that. I'm looking maybe at the speed that it approached that junction. I'm looking at who's driving the car, whether they're paying attention, their age. I might be looking at if it was an older woman or a younger guy. There's all sorts of factors. And the Tesla, when it's looking, all it sees is a car. But what I'm seeing is so much more detailed. And I'd be fascinated to understand how they deal with that, because, people looking at the same thing can see a lot more detail than artificial intelligence can, for example.
Yeah, I don't think the AI is to the point where it's profiling oncoming drivers and cyclists and all of that, and totally got what you're saying there. So, but putting it in a business perspective, so, right, you got issues, you need to raise money, you need to pay bills, and you need to increase sales, all these things. From your standpoint, where's the best place to find these experts that your business requires?
Don't just survive, thrive. The Financial Survival Network.
Fury Gold Mines is a Canada-focused exploration and development company committed to aggressively growing its scalable, high-grade gold assets with major drill campaigns planned across its 3.5 million ounce portfolio. Fury is led by a management team of proven explorers and developers with a track record of success in advancing and financing project development. Fury Gold Mines is well positioned to create value for investors with low-risk development growth and the potential for a new major discovery. Fury Gold Mines trades on the TSX and NYSE American under the ticker FURY. To learn more, go to furygoldmines.com. That's furygoldmines.com.
This is the Financial Survival Network, the information you need to thrive now more than ever.
Well, you've got to start with your friends and family, people that you know and trust, and try and get recommendations from there and gradually move on out from there. The alternative way of doing it is, of course, the internet or other points of reference, sort of more generally. But as we were discussing previously, Kerry, there's a lot of scams out there, and there's a lot of people who make claims to do things that they can't necessarily do, or they're looking to rip you off. So I think that start with you build your own trusted network. And you should be doing it all the time anyway, so that when you have an issue, then you've got people that you can call on. Because if you go calling without that, then you're very vulnerable.
Yeah, and to paraphrase something that's in your materials here, a smart person learns from their own mistakes. A truly wise person learns from the mistakes of others.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And I think, especially in business, I think that a lot of us walk around with kind of armor of lies, where we build up a legend about ourselves, and people go into like networking meetings and they're kind of high-fiving each other and bigging themselves up. But I think that to show vulnerability is a real strength, and others will respond in kind and show their own vulnerability. And that's when the real learning happens. So I think that, give something to get something, and just be straightforward and honest.
Yeah. Honest with yourself, to thine own self, be true.
Yeah.
Because, you do have a tendency as human beings, ego takes over. You start really deluding yourself. That's why I always say, you learn far more from your failures than you ever will from your successes. So recently you're mentioning you did a $3 million loan, pretty favorable terms for a small business. Can you just expand on that a little bit?
Sure. So this is an actual example that we have on our website in the news section, and this was a distribution business that is based here in London, actually in the United Kingdom. The business turning over around about £5 million. A pound's not that much different to a dollar nowadays, given the sort of strength of the dollar.
Very.
And making a reasonable profit. And the business wanted, they had capacity issues, and they wanted to massively expand by taking on a much larger distribution center. And they thought they were going to have to sell equity to do that. But because of the fairly predictable cash flows of this business, we were able to convince a lender that the business was able to serve a debt which is getting on for the same size of their revenue. So it was around about £3.5 million, and pay that off over a 5-year period, of which I think the first 6 months was interest-free. Sorry, not interest-free. First 6 months was interest only, and then the next 54 months, interest plus capital. So declining to nothing over a 5-year period. And this way, the business is able to retain all of its equity. There's no dilution for the owners. It's considerably cheaper than equity. The general price of equity we find it being around about 30% per annum when everything's taken into account. And of course, you lose control of your business because you have somebody else in there that's also part of the ownership of the business. And generally, they're looking for some kind of liquidity event in 3 to 5 years. And that may not be your plan. You may have succession within the business. You may decide you want to run this business for the next 30 years yourself, and therefore you're not ideally placed to bring in an investor. So if debt is possible, then in my opinion, it's always favorable to look at that first.
Okay. With this debt, did they have to do a personal guarantee?
There was no personal guarantee attached to this. It was very much covenant light. There were certain things they had to agree to. So, for example, limits on directors' drawings, limits on the amounts of money they could pay out, certainly to related parties. But otherwise, no. Certainly no personal guarantees as such. Just a debenture, like a guarantee on the assets of the business. Gotcha. But the business didn't have too many assets.
Okay. All right. Interesting here. So, as far as businesses that you look to work with, is there any particular type, service, manufacturing?
I think that in the current environment, certainly here in Europe, I'm not sure about in the United States. I think less so there. There's a massive pressure on discretionary spend, and that's being caused by a reduction basically the large increases in inflation caused by a series of events around the world outside of all of our control, a lack of confidence. And that means that businesses that are selling direct to consumers, either through stores or even online, I think are struggling more for funding than businesses selling to other businesses. So I think that right now, direct to consumer is a struggle, but that's not always the case. That's just it's a cyclical thing.
Right. All right. And your site there, Funding Nav, how does that work exactly?
It's just an old-fashioned WordPress type site. So we've got a series of, but basically, you have a look on there. If there are things that attract you, then just register to receive more information. Myself or one of the partners will contact. We'll be in touch.
Okay, excellent. And as you say here, you've helped raise over £100 million to date.
That's correct. Yeah.
All right. Interesting. Well, hey, really appreciate you coming on, Stephen. Sounds like a fascinating concept. Definitely much needed. It's amazing how the market really. 1 second. Sorry about that. It's amazing how the market really responds to the needs of its participants. There's just one example. If you got a question for Stephen, you can shoot me an email, kl@kerrylutz.com. This site is fundingnav.com. And hey, there's a link to it in the show notes to this interview on financialsurvivalnetwork.com. And when you're there, please sign up for our free newsletter. Stephen, good luck, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks, Kerry.
Thanks for listening to Kerry Lutz's Financial Survival Network, your solution to today's trying times. For the latest, go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com. Financial Survival Network, now more than ever.